Fusroda, 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 Fusroda. Your money. Fusroda.
Stop! You violated the law.
Fusroda! Oh! Fusroda!
I used to be an adventurer.
Fusroda!
I used to be
Fusroda!
an adventurer like
Fusroda! Fusroda! My sweet roll. Fusroda!
This is Elder Scrolls Betrayal: The Second Era, the board game. It's a campaign game set in the world of Elder Scrolls, like you could venture around Skyrim if you'd like. And it is the most ambitious campaign game. Actually, no, scratch that. It's the most ambitious board game I have ever played. And ironically, this ambitious campaign isn't even that long. It's only 3 sessions. Betrayal: The Second Era is a cooperative game for you and up to 3 other adventurers to enter the world of Tamriel, moving around 7 provinces, crafting your own characters from countless races and skills and classes. Oh my gosh, there's so many things to customize and there's so many dice. Holy cow, this is mostly from one single box? Gameplay is moving around the provinces and seeing what happens, and completing dungeons using the Chip Theory Games dice management system that is similar to Too Many Bones. This is all to complete a story of this wood elf woman called Deslandra, who threatens to rid Tamriel of all magic. So you must stop her. It was about 10-ish hours with 2 players, at least that's what we were logging. We, as in me, the guy that knows nothing about Elder Scrolls before making this review, besides, oh, I don't know, Skyrim, Fusroda, bro, right? But I've teamed up with a resident Elder Scrolls fan to play through one entire campaign. And then I did one separate mission with a new character to try more builds. I'm at about 12 plus hours. And Alex actually happened to buy his own copy, finishing 3 of his own campaigns, meaning that he's played this game over 40 hours at this point. We're going to be as comprehensive as possible, including a session with the Valenwood expansion map. And also we want to discuss how this game holds up to multiple campaigns, because there's so much breadth in this game. You have all these provinces you can try for each of your campaigns. There aren't any locked items or boxes you have to worry about for spoilers in this review, and we'll dedicate some time to explaining some of the provinces we actually spent time in. The names are on screen here. Last thing, this is a sponsored review from Chip Theory Games, and while our scoring never gets compromised, that is, we'll have 3 scores at the end, we understand if you want to click off because this is sponsored. But thanks to Chip Theory Games for supporting us and letting us delve into this campaign game multiple times. It's such a humongous game. So here we go. Let's get to the how to play. The goal of the campaign is to save Tamriel from Deslandra. To do that, you'll be playing 2 different smaller games that make up the big game. The first is Overland, where you will walk around your map, going to towns, resolving encounters, and choosing where you fight, which gets us into the combat, where adventurers will fight against enemies on a hex map. This is the meat of the game. So back to the zoomed out Overland, the game is played in days, and in each day you move your party around the map up to 3 spaces. Wherever you land in, you resolve the corresponding event, like visiting a town to flip through the book and see what the town gives you. Typically lets you rest up and buy items, or you can do an encounter where you draw a card from the matching deck and do what it says. Sometimes encounters will start combat, so let's drop into that. Combats will have different win conditions, like trying to gather magical things like sky shards, but they can also be conquer, which is just kill all enemies. During a round of combat, the adventurers all go first. They're allowed 1 movement, which is moving spaces up to their stamina stat, and then 1 engage, which is like an attack where you actually roll dice, and we'll get back to this. Lastly, you can expand the map by going on this exploration space, or use a class ability, where you pay a resource called tenacity that you can generate off abilities or certain die faces. But let's say you do an engagement, aka attack. You'll see that each skill line on your character has unique dice, and those all have unique faces that correspond to outputs. So let's say you do a 2-handed attack against an adjacent enemy. So you first change your battle stance to 2-handed so you can attack. Oh, also you can pick a weapon to attack with if you have any equipped. Then you roll them, and these outputs mean that you gain 1 tenacity here. And this one did 2 damage. You look at the defender's armor, which will block some damage, then the rest of their damage they'll take to their HP. Sometimes, some die faces will give you a passive by going into their active die slot, like this one that helps block damage by spending a point on it. Dice can stay here until they have no more points left to spend. When these go to 0, they go to your cooldown. Dice that are rolled and not going to an active slot also go to your cooldown track, and at the start of your turn you'll recover some according to your cooldown stat. Recovered dice just go back to their slots. After all players go, the enemies go. Each one will move up to 2 spaces, but they're lazy and will never move more if they're already within range to attack something. Their range is this, and the amount of dice they roll is this. Oh, and yes, many enemies have special abilities that can modify how much damage they do, how much health they have, the list goes on and on. But yeah, once all enemies go, it's the start of a new round. Move up that round marker by 1, and this is important because once it hits 6, you'll start getting real tired with these over-fatigued die. So now let's explain the fatigue dice. Sometimes if your character has to exert more, you get these. Like if you perform an additional engage aside from your normal engage, you get a light fatigue, which goes into your cooldown. This is junk that fills up your cooldown, and when it's time to refresh it, then it gets deleted. Over fatigue is more sinister. It doesn't get removed naturally. When it's time to refresh it, it just moves to the right. It moves to the end. But yeah, that's combat in a nutshell. You're taking turns and moving around, performing engages by rolling special dice. The dice correspond to their specific skill line. Then dice once spent go into your cooldown. Once your team completes your objective, then you gain EXP, then return back to the overworld. Now back to the overworld, every time you end a fight or finish resolving something on a hex, the day ends. You will adventure again on the next day. A session is 12 days, where you're gonna have many combats, but not every day is necessarily combat, and a play session formally ends with a quest-related combat. Win and you save Tamriel. Lose, and your story ends in ruin. And that's all we'll explain for now. Things like spending EXP, more details about what you can do in combat, and story bits will all be explained in the pros. We're starting with component pros, and oh my goodness, are these games pieces frickin' premium. Before we go any further, we have the gameplay all-in bundle, which is the base game plus a Valenwood expansion with the Thieves' Tropes thrown in. Okay, now back to the pieces. Pretty much everything, and I mean everything, feels awesome. It feels really good to the touch. Even the box lids are really thick and incredible feeling. Like, listen to this. It's like wood. Look at the inside of the box. Cool map of Tamriel. Best feeling board game pieces I've ever touched. Back to pieces, let's put the chip in Chip Theory games. And yes, the chips feel amazing and all have their own trays with lids and even 2 felt bags that are soft and nice. The standard chips are like poker chips with stuff printed on them. Very, very nice that the loot chip is a normal poker chip because you're constantly using this compared to other dungeon crawlers where it's just a piece of cardboard. The health chips are lighter, which seemed like a poopy thing at first, but actually that's a great design choice because you're constantly moving these around. Now that you're seeing it, the idea to have every unit's health directly underneath its chip is also freaking genius. Like it saves you so much setup and health management throughout a dungeon crawl. It feels closer to a video game too, where you look at the unit and can see the health in a bar right away. And of course, dice. You get a bunch of different colors, all screen printed with very distinct colors. And they're nice, also come in dice trays, which makes setting up an organization mid-game way easier than it could have been. Oh, dice go inside a neoprene mat for each player. A mat. And everything fits so well here. Man, I feel kind of spoiled playing on a player neoprene mat. There's also these nice plastic swords to stick in your sheet and are easy to see from far away. And these gummy pieces to represent stamina and magicka are also exceptional feeling for being plastic. They kind of look like marbled and yummy. I kind of want to eat these. Maybe this one's kind of sour. And chips you put in the side to represent skills are all great. They're like mini poker chips, and you get to have the same quality chip to move around in the province. Plenty of dice chips and Chip Theory games to move around. Little cherry on top is that the mats can go inside their own plastic dice tray for storage, which will even support your dice, meaning that if you want to put this game away between sessions, yeah, your character dice will all be maintained just like that. Cards, character involved sheets, and other sheets share the same type of PVC playing card-ish material. They're just so smooth to move around, and even after tons of hours of playing, they feel practically new. They're so resilient, they definitely don't need sleeves. Like, listen to this sound here. Oh, and the most heavily used card decks go inside this card tray. And while it's nothing fancy, it's like kind of clear plastic. I'm sure I've seen these at a generic office supply. It is very useful during gameplay, saves space on the table. Another vertical thing is this plastic holder for the EXP and day tracks. And man, this is so great to use. It's magnetic, so the magnet holds chips in it, so it'll probably never get misnumbered, which is great because this is the crucial thing to keep track of during your campaign. The neoprene mats for your dungeon look very detailed, and some of them being double-sided is very much appreciated for setup. And holy cow, a holding tray for them to go away. Wow, they really thought of everything. This feels so fancy. Yes, my mats, you all go in your own slot here. It even fits the Valenwood Clash mat, although it does get a little tight. To start wrapping up component pros, the Elder Scrolls just stores well. Even though the game is crazy physically heavy at 29 pounds and quite wide on the table, things would fit well in the box. Oh, and then the combats are just really fast to set up with everything. You just take out the entrance tile, maybe a couple more tiles, smack the chips down, chips come from their bags, and you put the health under. You're really ready to go. This can take under a minute. And now we're gonna get into the more vibey component stuff, namely how things look. And the game looks great on the table. Things fit together well. Your player area is easy to organize with your dice mat and then a bunch of character sheets from your class to race to skills. They all look great side by side, although it does take up a fair amount of room. Great clean graphic design on these sheets to really get you into that Elder Scrolls feeling. And there is just an insane amount of art in this game. It's all over the monsters, character sheets, and items. Oh my gosh, items! There's no repeats of art amidst the text, which is straight fantastic. Ah, more art, here you go. Here's more B-roll of it. Gameplay pros time, and here we go. It's probably the most obvious draw where you can just create your own character with so many different cheats. I can't really think of any other board game that does this to this extent in a campaign, so let's get into that. Step 1, you pick your race. Oh, there's 10 of these. These all have their own special once per battle. Okay, step 2, pick your skill line. Okay, there's 14 of these, holy cow. They determine which dice you're using. Step 3, you pick your class. Okay, there's 18 of them. These all give another special ability and ways to spend tenacity, which is like mana. Oh yeah, okay, so if you run the math on 10 races, 14 skills, 18 classes, see how many unique characters there are, put a number on screen, that's a big number. Wow, fantastic. What's more is that you can add on more skill lines to your character as you keep playing the game. Sheesh, yeah, your character can become quite nuanced. Note that each skill line can give you more types of dice. This means that Elder Scrolls Online fans, that is the MMO fans, who like to min-max will be very pleased. Even the most strange character builds in this board game can actually somewhat function, so let's just get into our examples. Alex's first character was a Dark Elf Nightblade who focused on Destruction Staff and Stealth, which was quite difficult because Destruction Staff dealt a lot of self-damage. So this first run was an initial loss, and later on he won by raising his max HP. His second character was weird. It was a Breton, a handsome looking normal guy, with a bonus to magic with sucky combat stats. So we decided to use Legerdemain and Speech dice. So it's a guy that is great at avoiding combat. At some point he was filtering through the entire item deck for the team. In combat he could guarantee lockpick to get every item and boost him and his partner's tenacity values so they could spend on all their cool stuff. But that's enough about Alex, let's talk about my characters. My second character was a Warden, a type of pet handler who was really unique. You could spend your tenacity to spawn either a racer dude or a giant bear as a companion for the fight. Then you could spend more tenacity to buff them. I combined this with the Daedric summoning skill line to add stats to my companion. So I had a super strong bear to attack for 5 dice, give maim which halves their attack, and heal every time this bear was attacked. Let's just go through more of these. You could be a bard who gets to reroll 1 every unit's turn, so you're constantly rolling. Or a Templar that heals himself in defensive stance every turn. Or Dragon Knight, cause MMO terminology, who ignores defense on enemies if outnumbered. Then you can spend 1 tenacity to move every party member 1 hex. But character possibilities don't mean anything without cool combat. And is the dice management possibility in this game well designed? And this is the meat of the game. If you don't like this, don't play this game, but trust us, it's well designed for what it is. So dice are almost every single lever you pull in combat. They determine energy, defense, status effects, and of course you roll them to attack. At a simple level, it's cool how there's different categories of dice for each skill line, and within each skill line, there's different levels of dice. So attacking is this fun decision of what skill line to use or what dice to roll within that. This is linked to the best mechanic of fighting, the cooldown track. This is where your spent dice go, and you recover dice at the start of a round. But there's a lot more cool things you can do with it. So since you recover dice from left to right at the start of your turn, you want to think about when you'll get back the dice you're spending now. This gets more complicated with fatigue and status effects, which go on your track at certain times, taking up space. So you have to play around those. And man, having these negative conditions as dice is such clean bookkeeping as you have a physicality of said debuffs as you move them. Some of the monsters attack you with Befuddle, which gives you light fatigue, which can start screwing up your cooldown timing. And when your track fills up, you have to start replacing dice with over fatigue, which is mostly permanent. This gets us into how fatigue is a really cool mechanic overall. So there's the clever system of overexerting now to engage again, which punishes you slightly later. Oh, but look, you only have so much room in your cooldown track. So if you overexert too much, you'll fill your track, Over fatigue is a fun time around scenarios, where it cannot be removed and keeps bothering your character again and again, slowing down your dice recovery until maybe eventually you can't do anything. And really, there's no escaping the end of the fight when the clock strikes midnight, as in the rounds hit 6+, and you take on over fatigue and take damage equal to all your over fatigue. So this is cool that even if you have insane damage or huge healing, you're still victim to your cooldown filling up and then over fatigue just killing you. This all culminates in how your cooldown track is well linked to everything in combat, from the rounds to your engages to even the monsters attacking you. There's even 2 skill lines, the acrobatics and heavy armor, which do things when their dice are within your cooldown track, which is mega cool because now you have to time and manipulate them so they stay longer in your cooldown and don't get refreshed. Next we have the second resource, tenacity, which is like mana, where you can spend it to do all sorts of cool class abilities. It can be healing you, doing an extra attack, or even doing a massive ulti, holy light, as this Templar attacks everything everything within 2 spaces. This is a nice supplement to the dice, where you're weighing between spending dice to do something, maybe overexerting to do it, or you can just use your tenacity. Plus, because the dice can sometimes give you tenacity, and you can never go above 5 tenacity, you play kind of a push your luck minigame of spending tenacity now if it's at 3 or 4, or being greedy and trying to save for 5, which is usually your class's best ability. But if you roll so many tenacity faces, those extra points go down the drain. Then we could talk about the race once per game to throw in the mix, like the Red Guard, who can remove fatigue or status dice from your cooldown track to self-heal. Or the Orc can end a turn, then take another turn by gaining just 1 over fatigue, so he can move and engage and cool down again. Oh, and then items. That's the next pro about the system, where you can equip so many different types of items. You can carry up to 4 at a time in your ready slots, and there's weapons, to types of foods, to glyphs, to armor, the list goes on. It's cool that you can have multiple weapons equipped so that every time you attack, you can decide which ones fit your current combat, and you can overtax them if you want to just have a big cool moment and then lose the item permanently. One item I loved was the Nord snowshoes to give me extra movement by just spending tenacity, or there's a silver circlet to pay tenacity to change skill die to the side of your choice. Wow, what flexibility. Heavy red tincture takes 1 damage max per turn, so you can tank a bit. Okay, then there's a glyph that makes you immune to lots of status effects. A magic potion that moves over fatigue to your active skill slots, so now you free up your cooldown track. Then there's just so much thematic food in this game. Some of them involve teammates too when you eat them, so there's a decision there to make. Losing items is actually okay because of the huge rate in which you get items in this game. Whether it's from town or caches, items can keep flowing in, and you can use them during combat as soon as you get them, which really helps with the feeling of adventuring and just grabbing from a treasure chest, whipping out a thing, using it immediately. Actually, the way you pick up items during combat is cool too, where it's a type of lock-picking check, where you just must roll dice to hit the numbers on the card. You only get so many rerolls as noted on the top, and you can gain life fatigue to change a die by 1 number, like 1 life fatigue to go from 1 to 2. This not only feels thematic as you have these tries to pick the lock by doing something physical, but also if you really want to commit to the lock pick, you can just go frustrated and smash the lock, take the life fatigue, and now you open the chest. So now let's get into progression pros, and this game has some really satisfying ticks up as you play through the campaign. You're constantly improving your character as you play, where you're getting more items in the middle of combat or between combats. You can go to trainers in towns to learn more skills. Then you're generating EXP. You can spend this on better stats for your character to move more or roll more or gain more types of dice. And there's different levels within each color. Like you finish your combat and you know what's in your next combat to look forward to, another die and a different weapon and a type of food to eat when you get tired. Or in my next combat, instead of rolling 3 dice for my magic attack, I can now roll 4 dice. Holy cow. Even tenacity carrying over between fights gives you a reason to play again, because you can look at your class sheet and go like, oh wow, next time we play, I'll use this ability right away. Oh, and your class sheet can upgrade only during a combat, which feels incredibly good to do and gives you another milestone in how tenacity is handled. Sometimes they'll make previous abilities cheaper, or sometimes they'll give you new abilities and an upgraded passive. Like the Nightblade can move up to 4 hexes when a stealth status die is removed or recovered. When you're a Master Nightblade, the benefit is to teleport up to 4 spaces and heal 1 HP. Oh, also you'll gain a new ability, Strife, which is now another way to do more damage and can keep your stealth trait. Generally in our games, it felt like the mastery of our class was normally around mid-session 2, which feels perfect for a 3-session campaign. This game also does a couple of cool world building things, namely the fact that there's peaceful or combat encounters to choose A or B options from as we move around the map. That's neat. You can participate in carnival games, you can talk to highwaymen, a fortune teller might give you a prediction that might help or hurt you later, the list goes on and on. Oh, and then there's side quests. These are nice. You pick them up at town, and these really do give more of a reason to go around the map and do things. Like I had to go find meatloaf for this hungry son, so you go visit his mom, grab the meatloaf guaranteed from her, and give it to him. But you can also be a jerk and just take the meatloaf for yourself. Or when you do give it to him, he eats it immediately in front of you and it kills him. So then you loot his body, hooray. Or a fan sees you. Yes, he sees you. He's your fan. He says, oh, by Akatosh's grace, it's you, the hero. I'm your biggest fan. So he hangs around in your next combat. He doesn't do anything, but if you stand next to him while defeating 3 enemies, he gets so happy, he talks so much, so everyone gains 3 life fatigue. Okay, that sucks. But then later on, you get the keyword adornment, and keywords can have repercussions for the later quest fights. How exciting. We won't spoil these, but there are usually 9 or so keyword checks come endgame. Now let's talk about the campaign and how it generally runs true to time. So the box says this game is 2 hours plus 30 minutes per player. So if you're playing with 2 players, it's supposed to be 3 hours per session. This is kind of true, especially if you have the rules down, but this length can go up if you decide to just do more fights. Luckily, combats don't really take too long because you have the built-in timer of when you go to round 6, you take over fatigue and damage. Also, if you are strong enough, you can speed up sessions by bypassing some combat quests on the map. Basically, if your group is pretty time-strapped and need to finish a campaign, you can probably do it. The last pro we have is that there's just some great breadth to this game. There's just so many ingredients. Like there's 7 provinces if you include East and West Skyrim as different places, which all have slightly different rules. Like Skyrim has some towns under siege that can introduce a combat when you go to these towns. Or High Rock has the world's unrest, increasing and decreasing, which can have negative effects on fighting later. Then all provinces have their own native attack, which modifies monster attacks that have the native skill printed on them. And when you do fight, there's multiple types of fights. So we have delves, which are the randomly generated maps where you're flipping over delve cards to make the map, and you're finding magic sky shards to leave with. Then there's clashes, which are like an enclosed battle arena. Then dungeons, which are bigger sprawling maps. Lastly are the quest-specific maps, which are usually like dungeons with special rules. But yeah, how much does it hold up in the cons? Component cons. So while this game looks and feels fantastic a lot of the time, it has one major cardinal sin of board game components, that is, things are just too small a lot of the time. The enemy iconography is just so small. It's extremely hard to see the 2-letter abbreviation of what province it belongs to, and when fighting, while the numbers are fine to see, we found ourselves constantly picking up the chip and seeing who it targeted and what category it belonged to. If the board was not anywhere near you, it felt like you needed a magnifying glass to see these. Oh, and then the enemy art being so small seems like a huge missed opportunity for more immersion. For the loot and our adventurers, yeah, that's real easy to see. For the enemies, not so much. So chip theory is making the trade-off of making the art smaller and the abilities all on the chip. Whereas if you see Gloomhaven, the art is much more front and center. Then you look at another sheet to see more things like health, and then there's even a deck to flip from. Also, these plastic swords to stick in and out of your neoprene mat sometimes don't fit all the way during the heated gameplay, so then they'll just fall out. This is more of the swords being slightly too light, so they don't have enough momentum and mass to stick in firmly. Sheets for every single enemy just isn't really doable in this game because every enemy is unique when you fight. That is, your component limited to only one copy of an enemy at a time. So if you have a lot of enemies, they're all different. So it would be a pain in the butt to keep getting out detailed sheets for each of these varied monsters, and we'll get into this later. Another small thing is the chip bags, which they feel fantastic, but they're actually too small to properly shuffle the enemies. So if you're not very careful with shuffling, you might end up drawing the same enemy multiple times again and again. You gotta be really diligent about shuffling in here. These symbols of what category of attack the sheet belongs to seems fine here, but when you take out the color from that symbol, it's really hard to tell the difference. Like the Magicka one just straight up looks like a spider web. If it's gonna be like this, just have the color outlining the symbol when it's presented in other areas. More visual stuff are the province maps you play with during the overworld, and yeah, they look pretty dry. See, I've never played any Elder Scrolls game, and Alex has played a couple of them, and we both agreed that these do not really evoke much, especially when you put them next to each other to compare. They're pretty similar, no? Like it's literally just a bunch of hexes on a map. Whereas the points of interest, like mountains, sea names, or forest names, regions, etc., etc. It's just honeycomb grid with symbols on each hex. This gets compounded by the Gazeteers severely lacking in art, which really ruins the excitement of going to a new place. And so you can't really get immersed in the world with zero art, nada, zero art for each town. Look, I know it's a pretty daunting task to create art for a dozen-ish towns in each province, but hey, this game is swinging for the fences with all the other components, right? It just kind of kills the adventuring vibe when you go to Daggerfall, then it's just a table like the other towns. Or you go to Orsinium, the pinnacle of where all orcs are, and where's the orcs, man? Show them here. Gosh, there's just so much cool art in the rulebook that just isn't represented well at all when you play through the game. This Gazetteer 2 is actually a pain to go through because they put your important main quest directives at the back, but then you need to go to the front every time you go to a town. And oftentimes, these things will play off each other, so you're constantly flipping back and forth. I've lost my quest location a couple times, and it's tricky to find those blurbs because they were only meant to be found after completing the previous quest step. Give us an index or split the Gazetteer in half and have 2 books. Oh, and speaking of the rulebook, the index at the back is not complete, which is super annoying. Obviously, you have your basic stuff, but when you're looking up more intricate stuff while you're playing the game, it's just not there. Retreat, or days, or even entrance, it's just not there. Real talk, the rulebook feels purposefully incomplete at times. It does this thing where it's like gleefully, playfully dancing around the actual answer. Like during the game, I would look up something really simple, like what is the win condition for a delve? Because I forgot how many sky shards you needed, and it doesn't say anywhere amidst the mechanics. Oh, only when I went to delve card anatomy to read sky shards, because I knew sky shards were the win condition already from learning the game from someone else. And finally, I found the win condition under sky shard. I don't want to get into too many examples because that's boring. But lastly, if you're doing a campaign without the first campaign ever jailbreak scenario, they should do a better job of explaining that. Just give a set page that explains everything you need to do instead of having to parsing out what directions you actually need to follow. It's the start of the campaign, so you don't want to mess that up, right? Oh, and what is going on with the tutorial book too? By the name, it sounds like it'd be a streamlined how to play, but it's just a description of a couple adventures going on their own session. I mean, this is fine, but it's not what I'd call a tutorial. Luckily, the Dizd app exists to learn the game, which is really high quality, so I imagine they put their effort into making that. Oh, and then did you know that the back of the tutorial has a quick reference for the game? Haha, we didn't know this. I really wish we had this for all of the overworld phase. Oh, and then here it tells you exactly where to find more information in the rulebook. We've played this game for 40 plus hours and are just fighting about this while making this review. Haha, haha. Then Guild Assist, a very useful once per campaign ability to save your party, should be written on the guild card, because right now it's only in the Elder Scrolls of the rulebook, meaning you might easily forget it. Last component con is terminology, where the term combat dice is really confusing. Because you think, oh, combat dice, right? It must be any dice I'm using for combat that isn't a negative condition to me or a fatigue. But nope, not at all. That's not the case. Combat dice is only referring to the white generic dice you start the game with for your combat skill line. And this constantly tripped us up during combat. Like you'd hear, oh yeah, this item does something when you roll combat dice. Oh right, the two-handed dice I'm doing combat with are not combat dice. Gotta remember that. So to change this, just call the combat skill line a flexible skill line. Or you can just call them basic dice or standard dice. Just call it anything except for combat. Gameplay cons time. And so now this first section, we're gonna be focusing on the combat, which is the meat of the gameplay anyways. So let's first talk about enemies in combat, where the decision to have every chip be different, every enemy be different, isn't really helping gameplay. Variety is generally good, but when you're constantly spawning different enemies, like when there are maps of 4+ enemies and they're all different, this can make for an unclear dungeon experience pretty much all the time. Like holy cow, there's 8 enemies and they're all totally unique. Where in the world are we fighting? What makes this worse is that in each bag of enemies, there's only 4 province specific ones per bag, so this really downplays the region immersion. It makes you feel like you're entering a bootleg Chinese restaurant where every single type of culture cuisine is served, so it doesn't feel Chinese. Sure, it has a couple of Chinese dishes amidst the French fries and pizza, so yeah, you can't really say it's not Chinese, but are you gonna get served the Chinese food? And you can't choose where you're ordering because it's a buffet where the food is getting served out randomly. And just like in Elder Scrolls, this game's enemies are served to you entirely randomly. You really often don't choose, even if the scenario sounds like you should be fighting a certain type. To make this worse is that the enemies don't actually feel that different most of the time. So sure, they have slightly different health and armor, but they all ultimately just move, almost always 2 spaces, then roll some amount of dice to attack when they're within range. But wait, you say, they have so many different attributes. Don't these give a lot of character? Well, not really. These feel more like minor traits, like when you kill a rat, it gives over fatigue, or how this monster has additional health, or maybe this one, when it attacks you, gives a bane condition instead of inflicting straight damage. So these are different, but it's nothing you'd expect compared to other dungeon crawlers, where monsters are memorable, like they manipulate the environment, or push and pull you, or they can start healing one another. There's plenty of these examples in Gloomhaven. This creates another problem of there being so many of these monster traits that you can't possibly remember all of them, so you have to keep checking the reference for it. And remember, most of them don't really matter that much. Like Colossal vs Cornered. Yeah, they both give additional HP, just get rid of one of these. Or True Strike, for when this thing rolls dice, it might do true damage if it rolls all once? Like, this is totally unnecessary. Some of these are deservedly cool and encouraging counterplay, like Vine Snare to drain your skill die so you either need more skill dice against it or don't bother loading up skill die in your active slots. Or Necromancy to revive slain creatures, so maybe you don't want to kill things that fast. Or Dodge, which can make you second guess yourself on just adding more skill dice because blanks actually hurt you against dodge. This could easily be halved or reduced by 1/3 and the gameplay wouldn't change much. And then you have the upside of remembering them would be so much easier. And when it's a trait that gives a condition, just make it that symbol of condition in this area on the monster chip. That's what Frosthaven does. You're in this mindset of looking up conditions, so you're like, Bane, I wonder what this does as something coming from a creature. Then it just says go to the explanation for Bane. Okay, so you just wasted time to get to that symbol. There's There's two fixes I can think of for the monsters. You can do one, which is doubling down on having so many of these monsters and make them even more unique feeling. Let's talk about something that already exists in the game, skeleton. So it's a basic type of enemy that has a lot of armor. Okay, so if we have more skeletons, we can have a skeleton mage that also has a lot of armor and heals only other skeletons. Bam, we have unique enemies that feel special and categorized. You could also just name a category for existing groups of units. Like say these ones all here are bandits, and that would be easier to mentally approach, and you could draw from the bag until you hit the amount of bandits you need. The second solution, which is cleaner and fits this simpler campaign approach better, is to just make the bag manipulation better. First, make them a lot more homogeneous to feel more fitting to the region. Just have the bag be at least a third to half filled with region specific monsters instead of just 2 out of 17 chips being specific to the region. It's possible to play many hours of this game and not hit a single region specific monster, which is pretty alarming. No harm in finding 3 or 4 of the same enemy on the map, given that monsters aren't already that unique anyways. And currently with one copy of each chip, you can't see the front and back of each chip at the same time. It's a shame because these enemies sometimes have good synergy with each other. This would let you have scenarios where it initially asks for 3 to 4 of the same enemy to spawn. So you set those up, and so enemy comprehension is so much easier, especially if it's a small scale fight. And then to fine tune how monsters are randomly spawned, add or remove chips from the monster bag as you progress through your campaign. Bag management would allow for more immersion in fights, where you're fighting a bunch of animals. So, oh yeah, I'm doing a hunting mission, that makes sense. Okay, you're fighting rats. Okay, then a skeleton, then a bandit, and then maybe a flame atronach appears. I don't know, just have like the whole gang show up at this point, right? It's like, where am I? This can really hurt the storytelling. Okay, one more minor thing on monsters, it's how they're spawned. It's a little bit funky. When you spawn on maps, it's always in intervals of levels 1, 5, 10, and 20. You're trying to take up all your EXP times adventures with the least amount of monsters possible. So if you're spawning for 41 points, that would be 2 20s and 1 1. Where this gets a little funky is that having less EXP is sometimes more punishing than having more EXP. Okay, math go. So if you're at a 4 or a 9 as your last number, it's generally worse. That is, if you're at a 14 or a 19, that's just generally worse than being at a 15 or a 20. This is because 14 is 1 level 10 and 4 level 1s. That's 5 enemies in total, whereas 15 is 1 level 10, 1 level 5, 2 enemies. But wait, aren't those just a bunch of level 1s? Who cares, right? Well, having more numbers against you is generally harder. Doing additional attacks requires taking more life fatigue. And then targeting multiple enemies with a single move is fairly uncommon. And then more enemies to go means there's more possibilities for attacks to do something bad against you. They can steal from you, they can inflict conditions, and they can give you fatigue. Remember, pretty much every single enemy in this game has a keyword. There's not really a fix for this we can think of, it's just an inherent issue of streamlining the spawn by so much. Again, it's not a big deal, but it can feel weird. Okay, now it's time for the next umbrella, which is how the items are given out. Let's go. See, you're constantly getting items in this game. There's a minimum 1 to 2 loot caches on each map, and every time you go to town, you can grab an item. If you're multiple players, well, players are all grabbing one item for themselves when they go to town. This means that it's definitely possible to luck into certain item builds, and then you're just really cruising through the rest of the game. And some of the common items are really good. For example, there's a common item called a parasol, which is actually just straight overpowered. You can spend 1 mere tenacity to forego any amount of life fatigue you're getting, and instead remove 1 life fatigue. Haha, this is so abusable if you have any consistent way of generating tenacity. Why wasn't this limited to at least once per turn and in the legendary deck? And then on future builds, you know what are good items, so then you can use abilities to just go through the common deck and grab the good stuff once you know what it is. You distribute it appropriately throughout your party, and bam, you're just super strong. Okay, the legendary deck is also not really feeling that legendary. It's because you get to see legendaries every time you go to town, and some combats are only legendary caches. So these legendary things start to lose their allure. There's no scarcity. My solution is to take some of the strongest items in the game, whether it be common or legendary items, the common one like this parasol, and put them into their own deck called a mythic deck. Put it a level above legendary. These are only granted upon doing something extra cool, like doing a specific side quest, or doing a main quest. Or to put in more organizational work, you can make these common and legendary decks be organized per session, like split them into thirds. That way you're not going to get a session 3 strong item in your session 1. The way items are given out goes directly into our next con of how it's just possible to become insanely overpowered in this game. So then the game becomes a snooze fest with pretty much no tension in losing a combat. Let's break down combat. So it starts with pretty much all your abilities ready from the get-go. You don't really have to change up anything, and you can engage an infinite amount of times for just 1 more life fatigue per engage. So with your skill lines maxed out and fantastic items, you can start to see how you can go ballistic turn 1 and just wipe out most of the map. This goes hand in hand with how the board states just aren't very deep. That is, the heroes and monsters are just walking around on straight generic hexes. In other dungeon crawlers, there could be things influencing this more, like terrain, then there's height, or destructible areas, there's pushing or pulling things, blocking line of sight. Yeah, none of these are Betrayal of the Second Era. Yeah, so at some point, it's very possible to just go like, haha, I just chuck dice and I kill things. Huzzah, I'm just that strong, right? And remember, the combat is fine if you don't min-max your adventure or luck into the right items. We have to go back to items too and explaining how their snowball works. So once you get a couple of strong ones early, you can use these strong ones to get more strong ones, and then you're getting more EXP, which gets you stronger, and then now you have better items. You can see how this kind of just keeps going. Let's look at some legendary ones. There's this monkey that can soak up 6 damage. That's like getting +6 on your health stat. Holy cow. Even though it's one-time use, it's so flexible to use. Or this vial that lets you move 2d6 during combat, so you can just zoom around the map and collect a bunch of items. Becoming too strong for the game is actually a very common campaign problem too. Like Gloomhaven and Tainted Grail also share this problem, where you just get way too strong later in the campaign. In fact, Gloomhaven and Elder Scrolls are the hardest in the beginning of the campaign. Then as you get way more options, the game just becomes easier. In Betrayal of the Second Era, it's basically forcing you to use your once per campaign guild assist early game if playing on any decently challenging difficulty for you. Again, this goes back into how the item distribution could have been more carefully done, but also how creatures aren't nuanced enough to be too punishing even when they're all at level 20. They only scale with your group EXP, so they don't care about how you just farmed up the best items and maxed out every track on your player board possible. This opens up a side discussion with how I think this game's actually okay with you being overpowered. So if we view Elder Scrolls like the video game Skyrim, bro, then a lot of the fun is just being strong and blasting away. It's not meant to be extremely challenging on standard difficulty, and you can get really unlucky and lose still, but you're not approaching this game with the mindset that you will get stuck on the same scenario over and over again. Remember, this has to be a 10-ish hour campaign, with each session taking 3-ish hours with so many levers to pull. So ultimately, I'm sure Chip Theory Games went, well, it's Elder Scrolls. Bro, it's fun to be strong and blast away. We don't want to alienate non-board gamers by making it too punishing. Like, you can look at how failing a non-quest mission is like. The days still advance, so things are still moving to finish your session fairly on time. And as punishment, you have to go to town and heal up, which spends another day. So not only are you now behind EXP and items you would have gotten from completing a fight successfully, you're now behind on days. Imagine if Chip Theory Games punish you by making endgames even harder. So this just lies in, well, if you're super experienced in board games and don't fail any combat and 100% all the loot, well then the game will eventually become a bit of a cakewalk. But then if you just want to have fun, bro, and just want to have suboptimal builds to have fun with it, maybe you'll fail 1 or 2 missions, well the end game is still very doable. And then you'll still finish the campaign in about 10-ish hours. And speaking of overpowered, there's actually 3 skill lines that stood out to us. These are so strong that you can actually get through the entire game by just using the skill line and not combining with anything else. So let's talk about them. Two-handed just does way too much damage output. Like, you can deal 9 damage with 2 level 2 dice. The downside isn't even that bad. Compare it to the generic combat skill line, which you're dealing max 4 damage with 2 dice, and that's extremely lucky, 1 out of 36 chance. These other ones are attacking with range too and also have good outputs. Like when I was using Destruction Staff and rolling for 2 or 4 damage from afar, so 8 damage from only 2 dice, yeah, that's so good early game. Then the bow line basically does true damage as your level 1 attack. It's so good ignoring armor. For more on the skill lines, the dark secret of this game is that these actually aren't that deep, which does reduce a lot of interest in playing them again. See, each skill line, while it does have different dice and different abilities per die, it doesn't interact with your race or class at all. It's all just happening in a vacuum. It's all a very self-contained thing within the sheet. It's like this because everything actually has to be a bit generic from the get-go. Skills simply cannot have so many intricate connections because every class, skill, and race line is meant to be interchangeable. Without walls of text to show you what happens when you pair class X with skill Y, well, yeah, they're just gonna be a little bit surface level. Our fix is to have skill lines be upgradable like how your class is. Cause you're telling me that these dice look so cool and they can only do the same thing again and again? Yep, that's unfortunately how it is now. There could be another sheet that corresponds to your race or class too. Wow, that would be exciting. Contrast this to Gloomhaven, where you play a class again and again and again, because by just adding or removing 1 card out of your deck, that has so much nuance. Here, that's not really the case. The progression for your skill is just adding 1 of the type of dice. This hits harder when you factor in the Elder Scrolls MMO. What if we had guild lines for unique artifact items? What if emergent gameplay allowed skill lines to be unlocked in boxes like Vampirism or Lycanthropy? All of these should be in the board game if it's trying to be faithful to Elder Scrolls, and this would make the skill lines feel way more dynamic. One final point tied to how skill lines have to be generic is looking at the items, where there's so many items that involve the combat skill die. Remember, that's the boring white one. So it's like this so that any adventurer can use the card. The problem is that this encourages players to upgrade their boring dice, which kind of goes against the fun of progressing the specific skills you pick. For this, I would just say, screw it. Let these items, especially the legendary ones, because legendary should be more flashy, right? Be usable with any skill die. Okay, almost final combat gameplay con is one type of combat called a delve. They feel extremely devoid of flavor. So let's explain a little bit more about them. They're a type of combat where the party spawns on the starting tile, and you need to explore a dungeon to find 3 sky shards, which are a magical crystal cool thing. To find the sky shards, you need to go to certain places on tiles to flip over a delve card, which may or may not have 1 or 2 sky shards grabbed by your party when you walk on the tile. The problem is that even though the delve cards are varied in giving you different loot caches and sometimes have a certain trait on the card, which gives a trait on the tile, and sometimes when you have a certain number of sky shards collected, the areas you go on do something, but ultimately the places you're exploring kind of just end up feeling the same. This is because the monsters that the tiles call for are usually just purely randomly drawn. So who knows what mishmash of monsters you're facing? It gets aggravated by the monster chip problems of there being no duplicates, as we mentioned before. Also, all the neoprene tiles are basically the same, like there's different shapes and sizes, but that doesn't really change much about them aside from the number of hexes. There's no terrain, all caches are only one of 2 categories, and there's no plot or campaign elements to the dungeon of finding books or talking to NPCs, so these usually just feel like throwaway in between dungeons. Again, it's just dry. So admittedly, yes, the delves do mechanically work, they just get pretty tedious to do back to back, and in one of the campaign sessions we had to do with delves again and again and again. Would not recommend that Morrowwind one. Let's give an example of a delve where we really felt it off of this card here, which has a play on too many bones. Ha ha ha, I get it, ship theory games. Skeletons, too many bones, but you're fighting a bunch of skeletons here. Well, the problem is that there's only 1 skeleton chip, so you put it aside and fight it with every monster spawned on a new tile, if that skeleton chip isn't already spawned on the board. So it takes this premise where, oh, we're fighting a bunch of skeletons, right? Oh, nope, it's just a normal delve with the higher spawn rate of the skeleton chip. So at the end of the scenario, we basically had the name of the delve forgotten because it was almost like a normal delve. And before we finish on delves, what the hell is this Black Marsh delve card? It is a trap, so when you walk on it and fail to check, which by the way, there's only 1 chance of doing so, you just auto die. Well, this sucks if it happens to be the only location you can possibly go on, right? Happened in one of our games. And seeing this card in 1 player where it kills your entire party of 1, that's just hilarious. Okay, and final gameplay con about the combat is just play it with 1 to 2 players. Because you almost never do anything when it's not your turn, aside from blocking enemy damage directed at you, which isn't all the time. So the downtime at 3 to 4 players is going to be immense. There's also just not enough health chips to support 3 to 4 players. Alex decided to be a maniac and do 1 session of 4 characters by himself, and he very quickly ran out of light fatigue dice. Trust us, keep the game clean and have 1 to 2 players. This gets into our new section, the gameplay cons for the Overland. And this is the Overland, this is the province. Why do we know where everything is? Why do we have a perfect bird's eye view of everything in this game? Like if you take most other games with maps, yeah, you have a general idea of where other things are in the world, like where the major cities are. It'd be so much better if we knew a handful of things, like general directions about the land, and then for there to be a number on each location. When you go there, then you find out the name and what can happen. So instead of just breezing through the map, because we have Google Maps on our iPhones while walking through Tamriel, it should feel more like an adventure where you know you have to go north, and then there's a bridge to go further north. So you go to the number corresponding to the bridge. Then you find out there's a highwayman, so you can try to bribe or fight him. You can even make this based off of what guild quest you're doing. Anything is possible if you make the Gazeteer do the heavy lifting. And with the way it currently is, it feels very odd that you can just choose peaceful versus competitive encounters so easily. Like you have so many on the board and you can just do them again and again. This gets worse when you actually realize that you shouldn't do the peaceful encounters, because most of the time they'll do true damage to your party. And so you should just do the competitive ones, because there's higher upside and engaging in fights where you can gather items. And if you're doing a delve, you can even get an insane amount of EXP. Okay, next, we did say the writing was good on some of the cards for the pros, but for the rest of the game, there's some big mishaps. One goes back again to the towns. And so any other place with friendly life is considered a town, which may sound like a dumb nitpick at first, but why not make these 2 things that sound like North Point on one end and Evermore? Put these into different categories. After all, this would make them stand out in the map instead of everything looking like a town. That gets us into how when you go into said hex, there should be more things that happen. Not everything should sound like a town where the norm is just to buy and heal up, because then places on the map muddy together. Like, wow, there's like motels everywhere? It would put a lot more grander sense of adventure to have rest stops that aren't strictly towns along the way, rather than pretty much every place is a safe town to heal up. Or you could reduce the number of towns and just have more items that function outside of combat to heal you up. Like, let's go down to Orsinium. Such a grand place for orcs. You know what it does? It lets you burn legendary items equal to your number of players. And if you do so, you decrease unrest, which is something that just generally affects the land. But where's the orc game interactions? Like with your party members that could be orcs? Hello? Hello? Then let's talk about the Elder Scrolls universe in general, like how darn vague the writing is in these Gazeteers. Like, let's just read something for fun here, okay? In Cyrodiil, the remnants of the Empire clashed with forces of the Aldemari Dominion, Ebonhard Pact, and the Daggerfall Covenant on the front lines of the Three Banners War. Dude, I don't know what any of these things are. Like, who are they writing for? For me, I know nothing about Elder Scrolls, so I don't know what's going on here. If you're a big fan of the Elder Scrolls, well, it doesn't go deep enough to feel that satisfying. It really does kind of feel like AI generated some of the time, maybe? This goes hand in hand with how this barely explains the races. I have no idea what a Khajiit is. Yeah, it looks like a cat. Why? It's a cat person, I guess? There's no explanation of it here. Or there's nothing for the skills. Like, sure, some of them are really self-explanatory, like two-handed. Essentially, there's no TLDR for sheets. So when you're approaching it without an Elder Scrolls background, there's a good amount of friction there. Give us more to latch onto so our character can feel more memorable and have a better direction of how to make it. What if I just live some stuff from the Elder Scrolls wiki on Redguards? Due to their swift and decisive conquest of Hammerfell, the Redguards are renowned as the most naturally gifted warriors in Tamriel. The races keep getting mentioned throughout the game because you're going through Tamriel, and I'm like, who are these people? Why are they acting the way they are? They're described like you already know about them. And we must talk about guilds. Guilds, you know, the thing that is such a big thing in the world of Elder Scrolls? It dictates so much of what you do. Well, in this board game, look, there's so much flavor text and this seeming weight to them. They must be cool. Nope, not really. It seems impactful because the guild you pick determines your main quest line, but it doesn't really matter outside of that. It's mostly just fluff to select your campaign start. They're really just here for a name. They give you a small special ability during the overworld phase when buying. That's it. This really amounted to nothing during our plays. Like, oh, you can train magic faster. Okay, kind of nice. There's this interesting one, the Dark Brotherhood, which lets you place a fear status die in a ready slot as an item. Then on your turn, you can use this item to apply the fear status die in an adjacent enemy. Okay, this is not good later on because you're using very valuable item slots. And also, how does this work? Does this die get expended? Can you do it an infinite amount of times? This isn't even a stretch goal guild. Your guild allegiance should feel like it persists through the game. There should be constant questions that ask you in the Gazeteer or during the encounters that go, hey, are you part of this guild? If so, do this thing. These do exist, they're just pretty far and few, unfortunately. And then we already talked about how the guild assist is just a one-time game save. It doesn't scale off your guild at all, so pretty dry. Now it's time for the campaign or the campaign's cons. So there are going to be some spoilers in this section, but I'm pretty darn certain you're not going to have the exact same campaigns as us because there's so many different types of campaigns you can have. Still, if you want to jump ahead to scoring, now is the time. Now is the time to jump ahead. Now is the time. Click ahead. When you first start your campaign, some of the initial flavor text, not all of them, but some will mention this lady called Deslandra, who wants to remove magic from Tamriel, so that's why she's evil. Okay, but she's an elf in of herself, so she is so magic adjacent. Wouldn't destroying magic also destroy herself? Also, she wants to remove magic from Tamriel by using magic. I mean, it's kind of intriguing, but it's not very well explored. This gets us into the plot. And it's just not very good. Oh, and before we go further, remember how we mentioned there's no art for the towns? And then how these maps were not very interesting to go through? Yeah, that hurts the plot. But also you don't get any art for the NPCs that emerge. And for me, the non-Elder Scrolls guy, that's rough, and we'll get back to this later. Let's just go through our first playthrough in Morrowwind. We start the first session with Deslandra digging for stuff, so the dig marker is going up, and once it hits the max, the excavation goes up, and then something happens. Nothing else happens on the Morrowind board, so we don't have any feel of how this dig is affecting the land or us. It's just an invisible thing happening in the background with no NPCs discussing it, nor have we met Deslandra yet. In session 2, we get transported to Blackmarsh, and we had a quest where two groups of guys were chasing us. Okay, finally something interesting is happening on the map, but they're chasing us to capture our loot. This has nothing to do with Deslandra. The campaign ends in session 3 with us having a showdown with Deslandra, where she's trying to kill the trees underneath Black Marsh. Okay, sure, so that was a crucial thing the whole time? We didn't know. Basically, this is just to say that things happen. They're totally independent, they just happen. So let's give an example of how it feels. You're in Area X searching for magic plants. Then you discover some cultists growing them. Whoa! Then you go to Area Y and now are escorting a princess to her home because that's important now. Then at the end, you get attacked by some cult. Oh wow, it's the same cult, that's crazy. End of the game. This has always been the case for each of our completed campaigns, with varying levels of mediocrity to laughably weird. In the third session of our 2-player campaign, I really had to think extra hard about what was going on, and constantly reread the flavor text because things were just coming out of left field. In my first session of my solo game, it didn't even mention Deslandra, but every session ends with her, so yeah, I'm cynically curious about how they have her randomly show up. So again, this problem of bad plot stems from all these things contributing to the plot, from the NPCs, the towns, and then the fights just not facilitating that plot well. And then the second problem is that the writing connections are not that good. Like, it really doesn't feel like they tested the connections very well, where you finish a session and then go to the next one. It just feels really random. And then it hits even harder when a third of your sessions have nothing to do with the big bad. Deslandra just kind of appears and she's evil for no reason. Why does she want to rid the land of magic? Who knows? We don't even get to talk to her about it. Oh, and then the end of our campaigns typically had some very underwhelming epilogue text. This is something about how it sound. oh no, the realm is still doomed. Well, don't worry, someone else will save the realm. Or, wow, it's better you don't know. Or just throw away this really freaky thing into the trash. Whatever. What? They even said once that you'll never find out. How unsatisfying. Also, what does Betrayal of the Second Era mean? There's no betrayal in our games. What? There's no betrayal we felt at all. A betrayal to us expecting a good plot, maybe? Elder Scrolls is really too wide for what the campaign currently is. If it's going to have these really free-flowing choose-your-own campaign setup with all these connecting sessions, the sessions need to be well connected. But yeah, that takes a long time to properly make. What we would actually suggest is getting rid of this open map element of the game and go something more akin to Tainted Grail, where the art is way more front and center. Have a couple of really solid art pieces, make each location a point of interest, like castles are giant areas with a bunch of levers to pull, or towns are dilapidated areas with some hidden treasures you can visit again and again depending on what campaign and day you're on, etc, etc. Or to keep the efficient time idea, the campaign could always be moving forward as you jump from one campaign point to the next. And then there's often forks in the road so you can pick which one you want. Right now, these locations aren't doing anything for the campaign aside from, oh, they're just like a couple of hexes away from each other. Scoring! Now it's time for a recommended score on The Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era with the Valenwood expansion, where we try to critically evaluate the aforementioned pros and cons with the caveat of whether or not this is even a good idea in the first place. This huge game where you can pick one of the many provinces and design a character, and the combat is dice driven, then you also have your Overland mechanics. Yeah, this is a cool but very ambitious idea. So the recommender score for this is going to be a 7 out of 10. It is good. But, as we said in the lengthy cons, this game has some real problems. It's a flawed gem. It's not a flawed diamond or a flawed ruby. It's more like a flawed opal. It's not as nice as a diamond, but it does come in a really nice jewelry case. If you're the type of player that doesn't care about the gameplay hiccups that will happen later down the road here, couldn't care less about the plot often not really making that much sense, and you just love the appeal of a 10-hour campaign that you're going to be able to finish, then yeah, this is good. Like we said in the intro and in this reel we're about to play, this game is Frosthaven, bro. It's for that subset of Elder Scrolls head who just want to do combat and don't really care too much about the world building. Just don't think about it, man. Just don't think.
Dragon Ball.
Oh, there's also something that kept taking us out of the experience. There's so many pop culture references in this game. And dad jokes. Like, what the heck? Look at some of these encounter cards. Alter your destiny. Ha 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 ha. And forever mine. For a mine. For like a dungeon, right? Ha 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 ha. And then the pop culture references are so old. I only know about this one from my guitar research. No Unrest for the Wicked, which is a Cage the Elephant song. Or Rooks on the Right, Midnight's on the Left, Stuck in the Middle with You. This is a song from the 70s. 50 years ago. Not many people my age or even younger know of these songs, which should really give you an idea of what the design team age of this game is. If you're looking for a very faithful representation of the Elder Scrolls world, you'll be pretty disappointed. We really suspect that the game is mostly a building outwards from the Too Many Bones core, then smacking the Elder Scrolls IP around it with not too much precision. Like there's no money or spirituality, things that are really central to the Elder Scrolls experience. Or how the Mud Crab, one of the weakest things in Elder Scrolls, now has Stalwart, one of the best abilities in the game to only take 1 damage around no matter what. What? Actually, this tends to treat the Elder Scrolls universe more like a generic dungeon crawler fantasy universe like Descent 2nd Edition, where you have orcs, dragons, etc, etc. But the Elder Scrolls world is so much more than just generic high fantasy. Like there's guilds in Elder Scrolls that should do more here, right? If they're gonna be in here. There's unique races that need more explaining. And then there's countless towns in the Gazeteers in here that need to be explained and fleshed out more. But for all our gameplay cons, the mechanics usually don't collapse on themselves at the end unless you're super min-maxing, likely in your 2nd or 3rd campaign run through. They usually don't collapse, which is actually quite impressive given how big this game is. You can get in and get out, and even if you're super overpowered, the campaign isn't that long for you to be in that power trip for long. Like you can customize so much and it still fairly holds up, though there are the slight issues we had with skill lines not being insanely deep, but you still have customization galore. Yes, skill lines, right? You have all these skill lines. And this is what really sold us on the idea of this game is actually just missing some expansions. It's a couple of medium box expansions away from possibly being a masterpiece. A lot of the core mechanics in this game are really solid. It just needs a lot more refinement and content. I definitely understand how all this stuff could be possible with this game being around $200 MSRP and their timeline. But yeah, it feels like it's missing stuff. We are the alpha users, the public playtesting crowd for this crowdfunding game past the first campaign. That's what it feels like. There's so much initial appeal, but when you look closer, the game is as wide as the ocean, but as deep as a pond. This might not be that bad at all for you, especially if you only want to do one campaign, and then that's it. The expansions could give way more art to the world, make skill lines deeper, make creatures more complex, or just give a standalone campaign that has a plot which is actually good. These are all things that are very feasible to plug and play. Think of a new Gazeteer, a couple new sheets, and a better province sheet. This is currently an ultra ambitious swinging for the fences game that doesn't quite smash the ball out of the park. It's more like to second base, which is still good, but it could have been so much better. Oh, and then you should definitely get the Valenwood expansion if you can, because it gives more classes and more items. So more breadth in a game where you're already going big in. And the extra skill lines it adds definitely are all interesting, like Ledger Domain and Illusion and Light Armor. Okay, let's start wrapping up by looking at the back of the box. What is this game exactly claiming to be? In campaign-based play, adventurers will develop their characters and explore the provinces of Tamriel, completing quests and revealing new mysteries as they uncover the plot of a hidden antagonist. Combining the Elder Scrolls commitment to world building and character customization with Chip Theory Games' world-class component quality and strategic design. Okay, so the Elder Scrolls commitment to world building, in some areas, yes, but in other areas, it's just kind of riding off of the cool Elder Scrolls vibe. And then the plot is just mediocre at best. This game could really use a DM to ensure your plot doesn't become laughably bad. Okay, and then commitment to character customization. Yeah, definitely here. But it does sacrifice the depth with how the skill lines are a little bit more generic. And then Chip Theory Games' world-class component quality. Yeah, agree. For the most part, the components in this crate are awesome. It's pretty much an X factor in this game. But then world-class strategic design? It doesn't have that much depth, but your player POV of managing this, progressing and getting new items and managing the dice, that is good. But again, it's not the deepest thing. So maybe you get this now if you need a super adventure customization short campaign for you and one other buddy. And then you've seen the components and the player mechanics, and those are the insta-play factor for you. Or you could get this later when the expansions come out, in probably a couple of years, but they'll probably come out because this is made by Chip Theory Games. I mean, look at all the stuff that's available for too many bones. Comparison time. We've been comparing this game to Gloomhaven a lot throughout this review, especially in the cons, because these are both physically big box campaign dungeon crawlers with asymmetric classes to upgrade, and then you both fight on hex boards. But actually, the game that really came to mind, I think of Eldritch Horror. Eldritch Horror is a co-op game that shares a lot of the same breadth and lack of depth. Eldritch Horror has a lot of encounter card decks, and once you play the game a couple times, you start seeing repeats. So to keep the game fresh, you get one of the expansions, and gosh, there are many. Same with Elder Scrolls. There's a lot of decks and chips and skill lines, but they do start feeling samey as you complete campaigns. So to keep the game fresh, get those expansions, right? More of these probably are coming. And for more info on the provinces we said we reflect on, well, none of them we played are really that special. Remember how the Overland phase doesn't do a good job of making stuff on the map stand out. So yeah, while these all have their little quirks for more content and breadth to the box, we couldn't have actively praised any of them individually. So it doesn't really matter which one you pick, but for your first game, just use Black Marsh as the devs recommend. But let's get back to the campaign wheelhouse that we made many reviews on these games. If you want story and intrigue, check out Tainted Grail King's Ruin. If you want sci-fi space exploration, that's IS's Vanguard. And then if you want mechanics in your dungeon crawling, you want nice, juicy, nuanced mechanics, check out Gloomhaven or Primal the Awakening. But none of these are just 10 hours with this amount of component delight. So they got something here. It's something. And again, it's possible that your plot when you play is just really good on your first campaign. Alex, for all of his annoyances with the game he'll divulge on in a bit, admits that yeah, his first campaign run through was good. If you only care about one campaign to Fusruda, yeah, give this a try for sure. And then this core system that we keep praising mechanically, it has a lot of promise, and could it be reported to something like Pokemon? Like there's no big Pokemon IP board game out there, and that could sell hard. So let's say your starting race is your trainer. So instead of Nord, it would be Professor Oak or Ash Ketchum. And then your starting Pokemon is your skill plus class line. Blue dice would be water attacks. White would be neutral attacks. Then exhausting dice is like using power points, and then just make your power points refresh every round. Then you could play around with terrain that Betrayal of the Second Era is missing, like water terrain makes lightning attacks stronger. Is making this game Pokemon not a tens of $1 million idea? Someone take it, just take it. People will buy it.
I'm very conflicted about this game. So much so that my personal score has waxed and waned from the highest of highs, where after one play, I was willing to give the game a 10 out of 10. I thought it was going to replace a lot of dungeon crawlers for me. And then on other points, I think this is the most disappointing game I've ever played. I think for a score, it probably should be a 4 out of 10. It's a little below average. Sometimes I can have a lot of fun playing this game. I'm rolling dice in combat, I'm leveling up my character, I'm finding new items, I'm discovering cool synergies between my party members, and I'm thinking, this game is great. And other times I'm reading the story and I think, this is horrible. So starting with things that irritate me in the components, I find these trays to be really annoying. This giant stack of common items to be too big to shuffle cleanly. I think these reference cards are too big and they take up way too much space. I don't like the little prongs that you have to stick in the holes, and the whole battle form mechanic is really fiddly and annoying to constantly pick up the prong and put it back in another hole and just keep doing this over and over again. I absolutely loathe looking through these Gazeteers, such a nightmare. Refer to the Overland mechanics, which could be very detailed, and you'll have to do this a lot referring to this page. So you're looking at your quest, you're reading your quest. Okay, now we have to flip back to look at this town. I hate this page. Okay, so I'm here, and I just remembered on my quest, it told me when I'm here, I'm supposed to do something. And then once I'm done with this whole thing, the day is now over, so I have to flip back to the front of the book, so I'm losing my place in the quest book again, and refer to the Overland mechanics, which suck. They all suck. But constantly, you'll be peering over the board, hunching, looking at the little pieces. These chips are lighter than these chips. So if you slightly nudge them a little bit, the whole thing will go toppling over. Playing this game is a goddamn chore. Playing this game feels like work. I have to randomly pick one of these mouse pads to put on the board, and I have to move them around, and these things don't move around nicely. You have to like pull them at an angle, which is usually the angle on the opposite side of the table from where you're sitting. So again, you have to stand up and reach over and pull the map tokens along because you have to keep building. These are not truly random when you're drawing from them. You have to really shake them up. So we have to do this. And then I'm gonna have to shuffle the common item deck, and that's gonna take like another 45 seconds. And all these fiddly freaking little things, they just build up on top of each other to make this game a giant pain in the ass to play. Yeah, I was a Kickstarter backer for this game because I thought the premise was super cool, and I like the Elder Scrolls a lot. I am not like a super fan. I don't read every single book in the games. I've played the MMO, I've played Morrowwind, which is to say, just played. I haven't finished either of them. I have finished Oblivion, and I have finished Skyrim, and I thought they were great. I mean, they're old, so there's definitely a lot of nostalgia. This is easily the worst Elder Scrolls adaptation, property, game, fiction thing, whatever I've experienced. There's so much love and attention put into little details in the Elder Scrolls video games, and that is the reason why those games are so beloved. It's not for their like extremely awesome combat systems. In fact, the combat systems of the Elder Scrolls video games are pretty lousy. It was that you could go to a town, you could meet NPCs, you could find quests that they have and go off and do them and go explore new locations that you didn't know already existed. This game is like a weird contorted facsimile of that experience. It's trying to emulate it because it's not simulating it at all. You will not get that experience if you play this game, but it's kind of trying to emulate it, but in a very abstract way. Like, yeah, you can go to a town and you can buy items somehow, and you can like level up your skill lines. You can draw side quests from this massive, totally uncurated stack of side quest cards, but it doesn't matter if you're in Skyrim or you're in Vardenfell or if you're in Cheydinhal or Leyawiin, you're still gonna get this card. And that's basically my principal problem with this game outside of the component nitpicks, is that the game is soulless. So if you are the type of Elder Scrolls player who really likes getting immersed in the story, the world, your character, you will not be satisfied by this game at all. Sometimes the quests are just really boring. Like, I did a quest with another player who I played a campaign with, and it was just go from town to town buying items from the shops. And that's what we did for like 2 hours. That was just like awful. We got into almost no fights, but we had a ton of XP that the quest was feeding us. We had exactly the items that we needed from the item deck because we just kept going to towns because that's what the quest was rewarding us with XP to do. So that's what we did. And when the session was over, the person I was playing with, he said, wow, this game's really boring. And sometimes it is. You don't know what you're gonna get. They have little snapshots of a general idea of what the quest is going to involve. I don't find these session snapshots to be very useful. Fight a battle, go somewhere, fight another battle. That's basically what they all devolve into. What you're left with then is the writing, and good God, it is just dreadful. The principal antagonist of this game, Deslandra, I still don't know anything about her. She just wants to destroy magic, which doesn't make any sense to me. How do we define what magic is? Is magic just what we think of as being magic? Like, does magic not govern, like, the fundamental rules of the existence of Tamriel? I don't know, and you're not going to get an answer by playing this game. So I kept playing this game because I was trying to find the fun. You know, I really like the Elder Scrolls, and there's a lot of things about this game I do like. You know, maybe taking a skill line that's not super optimal, like acrobatics, instead of any of the stupidly overpowered skill lines like destruction magic or bow, and saying, well, can I just play a pure acrobatics-based character? And you can, but I think the game is kind of just too easy, and once you start playing the game more than once, you realize that you've seen everything the game has to offer. And because the combat encounters are also all random, you have no idea, again, from the designer's perspective, they have no idea which one you are going to draw off of these. They all have to be roughly equivalent. Similarly, because all the items can be drawn from the same item stack, the designers have no idea what item you are actually going to draw. You could draw something that completely trivializes the rest of your campaign. This has happened multiple times. Or you could just keep drawing items that are useless trash that you pick up and you throw them away, and you just keep doing that over and over and over again. Yeah, I'm reminded of the Steam-forged game, the Dark Souls board game, which also had just like a dumb stack of items that you just draw from over and over and over again. So their whole design is kind of fundamentally flawed, because it's like, well, what do we do? Do we let players have the freedom to pick whatever they want? Because if so, then you're going to get a lot of misses. You're going to draw items or skill lines in town that is just trash and you don't care about, and you throw it away and you move to the next one. Or do you get precisely the item that you want at the very beginning, or the skill line that you want at the very beginning, and then you don't even care to interact with the exploration mechanics, the lockpicking mechanics anymore for the next 8 hours of playing because you're good. I think a very talented designer could take the pieces of this board game and make something actually outstanding. So I give it a 4 out of 10, mostly because I appreciate a lot of what it's doing. I think it could be much better than it actually is. But in truth, I really, really would never want to play this game ever again without like a lot of expansions. Oh, also, they should have used art from the MMO or from the games. I mean, what they have here is cool, but they should just have more. There's not enough art in this game. Not nearly enough art.
Okay, so before I give out my personal score, I just want to say that this is the hardest script I've ever had to write for Shelfside. It was learning about Elder Scrolls, playing this game. This game wasn't the longest to play. It wasn't the most confusing to learn. But there's just so much breadth in this game that so much kept getting added on to our scoring section and the con section. So thank you guys for watching and sticking to the end here. Also, thank you to Alex for getting this review out there and explaining to me all these cool Elder Scroll isms. Now I know what all these regions are, besides me just saying, oh, Skyrim, Frosthaven, right? If this helped you out anyway, please like and comment. Love to hear what you think about this game. And also, subscribe. Yeah, subscribe. We're on the road to 50K, baby. 50K subscribers. My personal score for the Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era is going to be a 6 out of 10. I have an above average time with it. I'm not like Alex, who has played this game way too much and is super disgruntled. I'm enjoying it. I'm actually really annoyed that this game wasn't a 7 out of 10 because These are the best components I've ever felt in a board game. They feel so good to the touch. I just feel happy touching this game and looking at it most of the time. This is the most physically pleasant game I've ever played. I just feel really spoiled by neoprene mats now. Like there's neoprene in so many areas of this game. I'd also find it kind of hard to go back to a normal dungeon crawler after this health system because this is so much easier than having to deal with little cardboard tokens to put on stuff. And status effects, oh my god, having status effects in your cooldown track is so nice. It's so nice. I will say also in our 2-player game that Alex had to do most of the Gazeteer bookkeeping, so I just kind of sat around and smiled, so that might be bumping up my component enjoyment a bit.
Goddamn chore.
Because when I played single player, it was a little bit more annoying. Contrasted to Alex, I haven't played through a second campaign, so I'm still in that phase where the goodies are unraveling, and as such, the game feels big, and cards I see are very exciting. While I have seen the same item a couple of times, most goodies still feel fresh after 12 hours. It's pretty impressive. And there was still a sense of wonder in my second campaign, where I got to use my companion and seeing how I can manipulate his bonus health and stats with Daedric Summoning, a totally new skill line. But the main factor pushing down the score is what you've probably guessed if you've watched the cons, which is the plot, which is just so silly. I'm not really sure why we're doing things. Like, I remember being presented that the world is in turmoil. And then when I'm playing, I'm like, I don't know, this just feels kind of cartoonish all the time. It's just random things happening, which is disappointing because I quite like this combat system. I think I really like it. Again, it's not the deepest compared to other co-op dungeon crawlers like Gloomhaven, but there's this raw thrill of just chucking these awesome dice and just seeing what happens. The dice management just meets the physical components so well. Deciding what dice to roll, seeing what slots I should put them in afterwards, seeing what dice to upgrade, it's all very satisfying from a board gaming perspective. And then the chips are, there's something about moving the chips too. Must be like a primal satisfaction with them. Nice. And at the end of our co-op campaign, it wasn't a total letdown. Like, it was still challenging enough mechanically for me, which is probably the first campaign I've completed where it didn't feel like I was so bored at the end. Because ends of campaigns usually suck in my experience, or the campaign is just way too drawn out. The cooldown manipulation and chucking different dice just stays satisfying to me. Still, this game feels like it's teasing me with this glimpse of the Elder Scrolls, and I'd really want the Overland phase to be more like Tainted Grail, more like an Awakened Realms game, I guess. So if they make the story and plot better, throw in some expansions to give more content, I could see this game being an 8 out of 10 for me.
Let me try that again.
Okay, go.
To that. Yes. Yes.